The Lost Cells, 1958. They called it the Rock. Alcatraz, the prison meant to break those whom time and iron could not. But according to unofficial reports, something else began breaking men from within in late 1958. Not the cold, not the punishments, not the fear of authority, but something that could not be written into the official record. The internal journals only called it unregistered inmates, phantom footsteps, or anomalous sounds. Never once did a report mention the word ghost. But by November of 1958, inside Block D, the isolation unit for the most violent and uncooperative, something began to happen that forced 3 guards to resign, left 1 inmate dead by his own hand, and 2 others swearing that someone else was in the cell, though the door was locked from the outside. An FBI document, dated November 17, 1958, survives in the archives under the name of Agent Frank Rowell. It was declassified in 1991. Among its pages is the following passage. During a night patrol, screaming was heard from cell D13. Search revealed no cause. Inmate present and alone. Source of the noise unidentified. 20 minutes later, inmate found deceased. No signs of trauma. Deep vertical scratches on the wall. Cell D13 had long been considered cursed among the staff. In the 1940s, an inmate named Malden died there after a week of claiming, "Someone stands by my bed at night and breathes." Official cause, heart failure. Unofficially, few ever volunteered to guard that section again. By 1958, tension in Alcatraz was reaching its peak. Riots, failed escapes, and public scrutiny plagued the administration. The warden, Paul J. Madsen, known for his rigid discipline, ordered Block D closed for maintenance. Unofficially, he installed hidden microphones and began a 24-hour surveillance project, the first of its kind in the prison's history. Some fragments of those tapes still exist. In 1987, they were given to paranormal researcher Dr. Helen Kruger of UC Berkeley. Madsen's notes describe what he called an impossible echo, footsteps mismatched with camera positions, and at times, voices, distorted, as if recorded underwater. Excerpt, December 1958. Tape 2347. Unidentified male voice says, "Let me out." Source unknown. All inmates accounted for. Camera captures movement in corridor, though lights are off. Frame shows silhouette at D13 cell door. Disappears in less than 1 second. On the night of December 19, 1958, Officer Milton Graves reported the smell of burning and a presence in the corridor. Moments later, the lights along D block flickered and died. When they returned, a ring of keys lay at the far end of the corridor, belonging to Officer Harris, stationed on the opposite side of the prison. Harris swore he hadn't moved. That same night, Warden Madsen ordered D block sealed indefinitely. But according to internal memos, the microphones kept transmitting. The problem was, the block was empty. In January 1959, Department of Justice Inspector David Langston arrived to assess staff morale. He interviewed 27 guards. 17 admitted to hearing voices or singing from the sealed D block. 3 described seeing a human figure with no face. Langston report, February 1959. Personnel display elevated anxiety and superstition. Several refer to the Malden curse. One officer, Harris, stated, "Whatever's in there isn't an inmate. It's waiting." Spring of 1959 brought D block's reopening. Few inmates were placed there, mostly for disciplinary reasons. The first was John Lombardi, age 29, armed robbery. 2 days in, he begged for relocation, claiming, "Something breathes in the dark." Guards assumed he was faking. A week later, Lombardi was found unconscious on the floor, hands covered in cuts, as if he'd been pushing something away. Madsen's note reads, "Inmate Lombardi claims he saw a man in an old uniform standing at his bars. Quote, I knew he wasn't a guard. He had no face. Medical examination, exhaustion, paranoia, self-inflicted wounds." By summer 1959, rumors of ghosts in Alcatraz began leaking to the press. The San Francisco Examiner ran a small column. Haunted rock? Guards report strange voices from closed cells. The Bureau denied everything. But in September 1959, Warden Madsen abruptly resigned. No reason given. 2 months later, his body was found in his car outside Marin County. Carbon monoxide poisoning. In the glove compartment, a single reel labeled D Block, Final Night. Its contents were never released. Until the prison's closure in 1963, Block D remained partially restricted. Inmates spoke of metal clanging and whispered voices at night. After the island reopened as a museum, former guards admitted certain areas were off-limits for reasons other than renovation. One guide, Marie Rhodes, told reporters in 1974 that the microphones pick up sounds no one in the room can hear. Later that year, she disappeared. Officially, she moved away. Unofficially, her name appears in a police report marked "Voluntary Entry into Water near Pier 3." A 1981 memo from the National Park Service reads, "Certain rooms of D Block are not recommended for public tours. Acoustic anomalies recorded. Resonance inconsistent with cell geometry. But one final detail remains." In 1983, during the digital restoration of the Alcatraz archive tapes, technicians uncovered the original reel labeled D Block, Final Night. It contained a short segment, a male voice, whispering clearly. He never left. In the background, metal scraping. Then, a click, and silence. Rumors persist that the reel still lies in the Department of Justice archive, cataloged ALC-1958/D13. It has never been made public. And according to those few who claim to have heard the original tape, in the final seconds, as the hiss fades, you can hear breathing. Slow. Close. Too close to be an echo. When the Alcatraz archives were opened to researchers in the mid-1980s, almost all files related to D Block were marked private records. Neither the Department of Justice nor the National Park Service confirmed their existence. But in 1986, a researcher named Richard Fairmorn, a former BBC sound engineer, was granted short access to a series of magnetic tapes labeled as Acoustic Studies of Penitentiary Environments. He expected to hear nothing but background noise and echo. What he heard instead was something else. On one of the tapes dated December 1958, you can hear a man whisper, very clearly, "There's someone else in here." Then, a loud metallic clang, like someone striking a cell door, and then, a scream. But the spectrogram showed the voice wasn't human. It was a blend of overlapping frequencies, extending beyond the audible range. Fairmorn published his report in the American Acoustics Review. 3 months later, the journal ceased to exist. Its founders cited financial reasons. No copy of that issue remains in any U.S. library. In 1992, an independent journalist named Nancy Eldridge, working for a regional TV station in San Francisco, began her own investigation titled Echoes from the Rock. She received a letter from a retired guard, Francis Harris, the same man who had lost his keys near D Block back in 1958. Harris was old now, living in Arizona, suffering from insomnia. He agreed to speak, on one condition: his face wouldn't be shown. During the interview, he said, "I remember that night like it was yesterday. The power went out, and everything went silent. Not just the prison, the whole island went still. Then I heard breathing. It came from behind me, but there was no one there. Since that night, I never slept with the lights off. Sometimes, when I drift off, I still hear it. Slow, like a wave hitting the shore." A week after the interview, Harris died in his sleep. Eldridge sent the footage to the station's archive, but the segment never aired. The producer said, "The tape was damaged." However, Eldridge's assistant, Kate McNeil, later claimed she had heard the clip herself. After Harris's last words, the breathing grew louder on the recording until it reached distortion. She said the tape started to crack and melt. In 2004, a team of researchers from the University of San Jose received a grant to study acoustic anomalies in historical structures. They installed instruments inside D Block, especially in cell D13. Recordings ran for 10 consecutive nights. The results were never officially released, but in a leaked report made public in 2011 by an anonymous source, the following note appears. On night 6, sensors recorded pressure oscillations, consistent with human breathing. Spectral analysis revealed sustained frequencies around 19 Hz, known to induce anxiety and visual hallucinations. However, the microphones also captured an audible sound, inconsistent with any known resonance pattern. At 2:17, a whispered word, "Stay." One of the students on the project later reported feeling as though the air itself got thicker during overnight shifts. 3 weeks later, he was hospitalized for a nervous breakdown. His name was never released, but his journal was found years later. One entry read, "It's not sound. It's someone trying to remember they were alive." In 2016, a former FBI technician named Raymond Jones posted a short message on an online forum. ALC 1958/D13 is not an archive number, it's a room code. The post was deleted within 20 minutes. The account vanished, but the message reignited debate among paranormal researchers. If Jones was right, ALC-1958/D13 wasn't a tape label. It was a designation for a hidden room, possibly underground. Some theorized that below D Block lay a service corridor used for secret acoustic experiments, and that's where the anomalies began. In 2019, photographer Julian Ramos received rare permission for a nighttime shoot inside the restricted area of D Block. He claimed he heard a distant metallic rattle and a faint echo of a voice, though he was completely alone. On one of his long exposure shots, a silhouette appeared near the bars of cell D13. The figure was blurred, but when the photo was digitally enhanced, the outline of a 1940s-style guard uniform became visible. The face, entirely black, featureless. A week after posting the photo, Ramos announced he was deleting all materials for personal reasons. 2 days later, his account was erased, and he disappeared from public record. No official report of his disappearance was ever filed. Today, if you visit Alcatraz, the guides will take you along the usual route: the main block, the solitary cells, the yard. But the door at the far end of D Block, the one leading to the old isolation wing, remains locked. Tourists sometimes ask why. They're told, for restoration. But if you stand close enough and listen, you might hear a faint metallic sound, like someone slowly dragging their fingernails along the inside of the bars. There's a theory no one officially confirms. In certain 1950s FBI documents, there's mention of Project Echo 9, a study on the psychological effects of infrasound on inmates. If it was real, the tests may have been conducted right here in D Block. Some historians suggest that Alcatraz's ghosts aren't spirits at all, but imprints of sound frequencies trapped in the concrete. Others believe that beneath the guise of acoustics, rituals were performed. Occult markings resembling Latin sigils were later found scratched into the walls of cell D13 at human height. There's one last detail. When the tape, D Block, Final Night, was digitized in 1983, the archivist who worked on it left a short, handwritten note on the cassette case. It wasn't found until 2007 during a routine inventory. It read, "The voice at the end grew louder after the power was cut. It wasn't saying, 'He never left.' It said, 'We never left.'" After that, the archivist's name disappeared from the employee registry. His line in the system was replaced with an empty space, as if he'd never been there at all. Today, thousands of tourists walk through Alcatraz every year, but security staff quietly admit that sometimes after midnight, motion sensors register movement in the empty cells. They blame it on old equipment, humidity, reflections of light. But in the surveillance log, one note stands out. D13. Movement detected after closure. Thermal reading, 36.4 degrees Celsius. Shape, human. Sometimes legends exist simply to help us explain what we can't understand. But if it's true that this prison recorded not only sound, but the memory of fear itself, then perhaps every footstep in Alcatraz is an echo of those who never truly left. And when the microphones still pick up breathing in the dark, maybe it isn't ghosts. Maybe it's just sound that refuses to die. If you made it this far, you've heard the echoes too. Places like Alcatraz never really fall silent. They just wait for someone to listen. If you want to hear more stories buried in forgotten files and locked rooms, subscribe. And if the lights in your room just flickered, maybe leave a like. It lets us know you're still here.